Okay, so this is the senior leadership panel. I guess the VC breakout upstairs is just finishing up, so we will have some people that come join us. Once again, I do have the Slido app, so if you would like to ask questions, please do, or we'll have the microphones coming out there. So listen, I think it's been a fantastic day, and I want to thank all of you again for attending. So with me here are co-founder and CEO Don Lamb, Group COO Brook Taylor, and CIO Alex Hambly. So I'd say no question is out of bounds. That is absolutely true until they tell me after the panel that was not true. But for the moment, it seems like a good idea. So Don, I will ask you the first question. You talked about this morning, you know how this year and certainly the last 3, 4, 5 months have been kind of a transformational year with Andy passing. Having said that, you've managed the firm for 21 years, and so how has been leading this firm through what has been an incredible journey in Vietnam over the last 21 years prepared you to take VINACAPITAL forward for the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, as I mentioned this morning in the speech, if you are in Vietnam, you're working in Vietnam, investing in Vietnam, or living in Vietnam, changes is constant. Changes is not something new. Changes is what you expect to happen. Anything with certainty is going to be changed. So with Andy's passing, it's a great loss to us, and I don't think we can ever replace Andy, but we do have a succession planning in place because we do expect the changes to take place. And with the challenges that come with Andy passing and the succession plan in place, we do have a great team that actually step up. And immediately we implement the plan, and we have Alex joining us. And so again, changes is not something that is a surprise to us. We're constantly evolving, we're constantly changing.
All right, thank you. And so Alex, we covered this a little bit in the VOF session. Maybe your answer can be a little bit broader. So you're new to the CIO role at VINACAPITAL, but people heard you were actually on the VOF investment committee for 5 years and were part of Prudential Vietnam for many years, so you obviously know the Vietnam story. Now as a full-time employee that sees across the organization, what surprised you?
I first came to Vietnam in 2000, and I knew Don and Brook from then, and we were building different businesses. But what has surprised me coming back this time is, and I did mention this before, but it's the quality of what Don and Brook have built. I've seen the fund, the VOF fund, which we talked about, operate for 5 years. I had no idea about the depth and breadth of the platform on which VOF was sitting. And that's not just about the investment that's been made in systems, but it's also about the people that Don and Brook have attracted to work at VINACAPITAL. And you've seen this on some of the slides where we've tried to show you two things. One is how long people have been at VINACAPITAL, and we discussed how important that is, but then where they worked before. And the biggest surprise for me is that unique, unique's a terrible word to use all the time, but a unique combination of international and local experience, and the potential of those people to take this platform forward.
And so Brook, in prior years, so in addition to being Group COO, you're also CEO of the asset management business. In prior years, you've highlighted the opportunity of the domestic asset management business really to help VINACAPITAL as a way to help Vietnam's middle class grow their wealth. What has been the progress of this business the last couple of years?
Yeah, we haven't really covered that today because a lot of the topic has been focused on our international products and funds, but we also been aggressively building a domestic asset management business as well, serving the growing prosperity and wealth, the accumulation that's occurring within households in Vietnam. So it's been a very good year. During the year, interest rates have started to come down, so that's been good. But also investors they see volatility in the stock market, so are a little bit nervous about managing their own money in the market. And an increasing number of people just don't want to manage money directly in the stock market. They don't trust themselves. And as a result, they're turning to mutual funds. And we think that the market's at an inflection point. I think closing out this year that we will increase our AUM by 100%. And I'm pretty confident that on the years ahead we'll double each year. That's at least the challenge I've given to Eric to grow our business. But we see huge opportunity. At the moment, this is a market in terms of mutual funds that is very underpenetrated. The total AUM of the domestic market is about $1.4 billion. Now, if we put an overlay and compared it with Thailand, as a percentage of GDP, in Thailand, the mutual fund market is about 40% of GDP. So we're looking at an industry here in Vietnam that should be $120 billion. So that's the sort of growth that we see ahead. And as I said, I think we're at an inflection point and we're extremely well positioned to capitalize on that.
Can I jump in? So I was asked a question about surprises. And I talked about people. The other thing that a CIO needs to worry about is process and quality of information. And this business that Brook is talking about, I've been able to sit in on a few meetings and it's really high quality. You know, the way that that team is thinking about its investments, the way it's thinking about its process, the way it's presenting the information, it's a high quality business that they built in there. And that's down to Brook and the team and the people. You know, if you ask me my biggest surprise, it was that.
Terrific. And so Don, you know, as you think about the company's evolved and performed in 2024, I'll ask you two questions. One is the great thing, one is the less great thing. What are you most proud of, but then also what keeps you awake at night?
You know, investing in Vietnam over 20 years, again, you know, it's things evolving all the time. You know, how we started out with the Vietnam Opportunity Fund, and as we evolve, we add new platform, new products as the economy evolve. And you know, the last 3 to 5 years, it's mostly the domestic business, which Brook have helped build up, and the clean energy business that we are starting to move on to, the VINACAPITAL. And most important is that I think after about 5 years pushing really hard, we now have really pretty much all the investing company in our portfolio follow ESG. And that's one of the things that we are most proud of is now it's not us that's just doing it, but we are now pushing it down and getting Vietnamese company to do so. And hopefully you have a chance to pick up a copy of our ESG report. Hard copy is outside, but you can get a soft copy with you. And I think as we get older, we are thinking about more what we want to leave behind, and this is something I'm really proud of. And there's challenges, you know, it's like every emerging market, I guess. It's a volatility, it's the changes in people's perception of politics, the risk, and so on and so forth. But I believe that what you see, the team that's presenting in the last 4 or 5 hours, we have been able to manage through all those, and those are the things that we continue to do, managing risk. And anticipation changes, and we always expect change to come. It could be change next year, change next 24 months, whatever, but we do anticipate change goes.
Thank you. And so Alex, you're now back to being a full-time resident in Vietnam after being away for many years. How have the investment opportunities changed since you were here before? And as CIO, how is VINACAPITAL organized to effectively capitalize on these opportunities? And by the way, how many years were you away?
Not as many as perhaps people think, but certainly, let's say I wasn't investing or involved in the market for 5 years, 10 years, up until I came back into VOF. But in terms of the change, it's quite strange because a lot of the faces are the same, a lot of the company names are the same, a lot of the people are the same, but the scale has changed beyond belief. And the ambition has changed beyond belief. And the last bit is really the self-belief. When I first came here, people actually thought I knew what I was talking about and would listen. People here have really moved on now. And the role of people like me within that is completely different. It's a supported role, whereas before it was a leadership role. And I would just say, and as you think forward, the scale of what is going on here, this was a cottage industry, and it's not a cottage industry anymore. This is a really serious economy.
So, Brook, you know, as you mentioned during your talk earlier, you know, Vietnam is often misunderstood by people outside of Vietnam, and actually, as we've learned, even inside Vietnam. As you've done many talks, what has been your kind of greatest takeaway, your learning moment as an author?
No, yeah. If anything, it's the satisfaction, actually, that the dialogue is changing, right? So, as I was talking at lunchtime, I feel that we're at a key point in Vietnam's rise, let's say. And it's the time for this dialogue to say, well, look at what we've achieved. What's the future look like? What can we achieve going forward? And that is a dialogue, I think, that if I look around, not so much the things some I have attended and some I haven't, but that sort of dialogue is picking up more and more in the community here in Vietnam. I attended an event 2 months ago, which I spoke at, where Madam Nguyen, who is a very accomplished lady here, she was the first ambassador to the European Union for Vietnam, and very, very accomplished lady, that was called Vietnam the Moment. And what she was trying to do was build momentum to encourage Vietnamese people to look at what's been achieved and take some pride in their country and attract Vietnamese to come back. There's no need to leave anymore, she was saying. You can come back and you can build careers and success. So I think what I feel very happy about in terms of the book is it's extremely well timed. One more anecdote around that one. Don made a comment coming back from New York that Tu Lum's dialogue with the United Nations, I think it was, correct me if I'm wrong, Don, was all about the Vietnam of the future, that we're at a key turning point, that, you know, watch out world, Vietnam's coming. And I think that that is a serious message that people should stand up and pay attention to.
I mean, you only had to listen to the presentation by FPT. I mean, that's transformational. I mean, it's incredible what's going on.
Actually, I'll mention this one thing. So, Viet Le from FPT mentioned this, but maybe write this down or we can be able to. So there was a documentary on the Discovery Channel. It's 22 minutes. It's called Silicon Delta. And I would encourage all of you to watch that, or importantly, share that with people who maybe wanted to attend the conference but weren't able to. It's a wonderful kind of advertisement for FPT or Vietnam, but it's 22 minutes about the history. And so I learned that FPT stood for food processing technology because they just wanted to start a company, and that's what they did. And then they moved on to, let's call it, actual technology. But really, that documentary is wonderful. So two questions.
Can I just add to that a little bit? Is that all right? So when you listen to him and you listen to the OCB, and I was talking there a little bit about self-confidence, but they were using a word called mindset. They were using mindset. And you just get the impression, if the mindset is right, the potential to achieve things here is, and you look at what VINACAPITAL have done and what Don and Brook have done, they've set their mind on building the leading multi-asset manager in this country, and it's happening. It's happened.
So we have two questions that came in what makes me smile and also laugh a bit is the questions are in a weird way diametrically opposed, but both very positive. One of them, so I'll ask both of them, and you guys can choose who gets to answer what. One of them is, can VINACAPITAL sustain investments in so many sectors? And the other one is, given the strong and proven platform that VINACAPITAL's built over the past 20 years, are we thinking of expanding our fund range to include other markets like ASEAN? And so it's interesting because we have this, what I think is a proven track record in multi-assets. And the CIO wants to take this one, okay.
No. Closer, yeah.
Closer, okay.
Your mic.
Okay, sorry.
We've got to hear you.
Okay. In terms of a multi-asset platform, I think in a market like Vietnam, emerging market, I think the multi-asset platform worked perfectly well. And the main reason I'm saying that is that in a market like this, you gotta be opportunistic. As opportunity arises, you need to set a new asset class. We have not looked at the energy business at all until about maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And as the energy business evolve and clean energy evolve, that's a growth sector that you want to be in. That's first, as opportunity arises. Second is that when you already have a network, let's say we work on something with the Ministry of Industry and Trade, MOIT, on one thing. But the same people is going to work with you on other area. So it's the same contact point. Or if you do work with the government office, it's the same thing. If you work in one sector, it's going to affect the other sector. So it's make it much more efficient in terms of multi-asset class. Also, the skill set that you build up over time. You may invest in private equity, but in other areas, the other team may know something about the area that you work on, that you can share knowledge and information. So to answer your question, in an emerging market like Vietnam today, it's super helpful.
Yeah, just to continue, we have specialist teams across all asset classes and strategies as well. So it's really about scaling, building additional teams, and that's exactly what you see with the logistics team up here presenting earlier and the VINACAPITAL team presenting separately. Where we see opportunities, where we see new strategies, we invest in people to build out those strategies, to raise the money, and to leverage off the whole network effect. So, yeah, I don't see any issues with that.
And what about going broader than Vietnam?
I don't see us expanding offshore anytime soon. We had an office in Cambodia once, we had an office in Myanmar once, and it was a bit of a self-reflection because we shut down both of them after about 2 or 3 years in both markets because we realized they're different. We understand Vietnam. We're Vietnam experts, and that's where we can build. There's plenty of opportunities in this country for us to pursue, and that's what we decided to focus on. Now, going into other international markets, there will probably be an opportunity one day to do it, and that will come to coincide with when Vietnamese are allowed to invest offshore, right? So if we think about let's say the different evolution of VINACAPITAL, we started by raising money offshore for investment into Vietnam. Increasingly, we're raising money in Vietnam for investment into Vietnam. And eventually, we'll be in a position where we can raise money in Vietnam for investment offshore, right? So that's probably 5 to 10 years away because the current law doesn't provide it. It doesn't allow us to do anything like that. But that's how I would see we would go into international markets. And I'm not sure we would do it ourselves. We're better to find a partner or several partners in other markets to help us achieve that goal.
If you look at the Korea market, for example, like Murray Asset, if you look at 30 years ago, it's all foreign investment fund in Korea. But as the Korean market evolved, you have Murray Asset now raising domestic money and then start investing outside Korea. So we look at the similar sort of trajectory, the same path. It will happen, but it's going to be a while.
I'll add one comment, because when we get questions about the sectors or different asset classes, I think it's also important to recognize that when we were founded in 2003, it was with one fund. And then it was really over time that the platform grew. And kind of the way I think about it is we do something well, and then somebody asks us if we can do something else for them. And so the platform really grew up along 2 tracks. Number 1 was the evolution of the capital markets, and number 2 was demand from international partners who then came to us and said, can you help us this? We'd like to do venture capital. Can you help us with this? We'd like to do solar and wind. Can you help us with this? And so we've tended to be that local partner of choice for a lot of international institutions who understand they want access and exposure to Vietnam, but also understand that they're going to have a better experience, a better outcome by partnering with somebody locally versus trying to do it themselves. And so, I don't know, maybe 2 years from now, next year, there might be another asset class. You talked about semiconductors this morning, but it's really going to come down to who's going to come and ask us to say, can we support that asset class?
No, that's exactly. I can give you an example. 17, 18 years ago, on a panel similar to this, and Tim Draper out of Silicon Valley sat next to me. We're in the same panel, talk about potential technology in the future. And that's how we started DFJ VINACAPITAL, the first venture capital fund, because he would turn to me and said, look, maybe we can bring our US model of venture capital investment into Vietnam. So that's a great example. It's typically an opportunity arises and an international partner comes to see us, and we're always the first one to get knocked on the door because we do have a great team, and we do have a brand, and we partner with them.
So Don, sticking with you, so, politics is always one of those things where everyone wants to listen about it. It's hard trying to talk about it, so you introduced it, so I'll follow up. You mentioned you were with the General Secretary last week or maybe 2 weeks ago in New York. What is your biggest takeaway from that? And then how is VINACAPITAL's relationships, or how is just being part of those conversations, how do those insights help us serve our clients more effectively?
I think the last 20-odd years, even before VINACAPITAL was found, when there was a partner at PwC, we have always been acting more as the ambassador for international investment coming to Vietnam. So since then, we have served over 4 prime minister and leadership changes, and it's always been the case that Vietnamese government delegation going somewhere, they would work with us, or we work with them to set up a business roundtable introducing Vietnam to the world. And tend to be, that's our role, is to introduce Vietnam, correct any wrong perception about Vietnam, and go back to specifically the New York trip. I think the key message there is that it doesn't matter what leadership changes are, the policies stay the same, and Vietnam's open for business. And that's really taken well with some of the major institutional investors in New York. And I think that's continued the message that we're trying to promote.
Are there some questions here from the audience?
Lee Hock here. Now, the transition from a frontier to emerging market next year may, or should I say will, happen. That obviously is opening new opportunities for your company. Do you see, in terms of the entry of foreign managers coming to Vietnam to participate in this new era when we are now growing into this? Do you see, I understand, for instance, 1 or 2 Korean managers are already here. Kim is already here. But when we move to this new era, do you expect to see a few more foreign managers coming to Vietnam? And what is the implication of that? Yeah. So that's point number 1. Point number 2 is in the transition to emerging markets, what would be the percentage of Vietnam within the emerging markets index? And what is the implication of that as well?
The public equity team will have to answer that. I don't have it on hand. You have it. Okay. Look, yes, we've seen a couple of asset management companies come in from Korea, try to penetrate the market. Look, the Koreans have been very active across almost all sectors in Vietnam, consumer, financials, everything, right? They see a lot of similarities between the development of South Korea and what they see here in Vietnam. Going back to my earlier comments today. So it's not surprising they're trying to build out their businesses and expand into Vietnam. It's having limited success because they are trying to apply Korean models to the Vietnam market. And this is a mistake a lot of foreign investors make when they come to Vietnam, is they think, well, just because it worked in my home country, I'll bring it to Vietnam and I'll apply it. And they don't adapt and change. Of course, they'll learn and they'll continue to evolve, and I think it's something that we have to accept as we go forward. There'll be more competition. I think the real movements will come when there's I know that this is important on your agenda, but the pension industry and the development of the pension industry here, which is taking much longer than we would like to see, but it will start to evolve more positively, let's say, in the years ahead. And I think that will attract more foreign interest, and it will activate likes of Templeton, for example, that are already here, but they're sort of under the radar. We'll start to see more there. In the face of it, I feel very confident about our position. I feel that we have the best brand, the best performance, the best distribution, and we'll take them on and we'll see where we get to. But we're aware of this, and we need to prepare for the medium and long term, and so all these factors need to be taken into account.
I'll just add a brief point, and don't get me wrong, I absolutely do not know the answer to the second question, which is what's the weight in the EM index, because I don't think it's final. But I think there's two things that are very important when we talk about the potential upgrade. Number one is that it's FTSE, not MSCI. And so there's a much smaller pool of passive capital that follows FTSE. And so when you go from Frontier FTSE to EM FTSE, it's not the billions of dollars that will come in with MSCI. But I'll tell you why it's still very important. I've met in Hong Kong with several institutional managers whose primary client base are U.S. pension and endowments. And those are very benchmark sensitive. And so they oftentimes want to take smaller off-benchmark bets, but can't. And so I think what we'll actually see is the potential actually for more active flows coming into Vietnam than passive flows. So the MSCI upgrade, which is longer term, 28, or who knows with policy, I think what we're going to see when we get the upgrade is you're going to see a lot more active managers who have kind of paid casual attention to Vietnam. Those people are going to be spending a lot more time on Vietnam, and that's going to bring a lot more liquidity into the market. I think for other investors, I think you'll see more flows as well, but it actually won't be the passive benefit that's really associated with MSCI. Additional questions? I didn't actually plant questions because I thought people would ask questions. Okay, hold on one second. Let me see here. Okay, thank you, sir.
Thanks for your presentation. And my view is that VINACAP represents innovation and technologies in Vietnam, and I think today's presentations, various presentations, continue to emphasize that. I do notice that your VC fund, your Fund 2, with Murray Assets, has a few portfolio companies in the blockchain space. Congratulations on making that leap. Wondering if you have any plans forward, given Vietnam is super active in the space, Vietnamese population itself is super active in the space, whether it's in the VC space or liquid space, investing in equities, which could be, which could kind of circumvent that legal hurdle if there is one.
Are you talking crypto or blockchain? Blockchain. Well, so we're already doing that in VC. So is the question, will we do more of it?
Yeah, more of it, dedicated funds, more allocations.
Okay, so I'll take a stab at that. I don't see us having a blockchain-focused fund, because then you may be forced to buy things if there aren't enough great companies. Having a technology platform like venture capital or V3, which we'll be launching, blockchain will be a big part of that. Having said that, when we think about our alternatives platform, particularly venture capital, we actually promote that externally. So while a lot of domestic, younger population look at crypto and look at other things, we actually don't sell our alternative platform within Vietnam because of inexperience in lockups and alternative investments. And so I think what we'll always look at is what's the best way to invest in innovation, what's the best way to partner with entrepreneurs, and certainly venture capital for us is a great way to do that. I don't think that means having a blockchain-focused fund. I do think it means having a technology fund where blockchain will be part of that. And by the way, Trung and Richard, if you're in the room, I certainly hope I represented what you're thinking well.
I love this blockchain topic a little bit, and we write about it in the book. I just want to share an observation as well. So, because blockchain is interesting in Vietnam, in that there is a very strong capital base there for blockchain development. And the reason for that is that it's a leapfrogging technology, right? So if you go in other countries, a lot of the problems that blockchain could be used to solve have already been solved by legacy systems already. So what it means in Vietnam is that the technologies such as blockchain get adopted very, very quickly here, and you can actually get, strong leadership across the world in the development of these technologies, and I think that's happened. I think there needs to be more opportunities. We have got some in our fund, but I must say, in recent time, there hasn't been a lot of opportunities for us to look at, except for those that want to bring us crypto. And we've refused point blank, we're not touching it, right? So to the extent that there are technologies in that space that we should be looking at, I think there should be in Vietnam. They're just not coming to the surface right now.
Yeah, I see. Wait, we have one final question.
Thank you for all your opinions today. So I've heard throughout the day, Vina Capital is very positive on the Vietnam market, which is great. But at the same time, we've heard a lot of news about new investment in the region. For example, the Google $2 billion investment in Thailand, or Oracle $6.5 billion investments in data center in Malaysia. A lot of big companies have come to Vietnam and have the show and tell pictures, but where is the money is the questions. And what are you thinking in terms of Vietnam competitiveness, especially in terms of FDI and others in this kind of situations? Are we losing? What is the situation now?
Okay, thanks for that. Obviously, Vietnam is very focused in bringing the major names to Vietnam, like Vina and Google and those guys. But if I'm Google, if I just put my hand and said, I want to build a data center in ASEAN, you're going to have 10 countries go and pitch to them. So Google would have a pretty wide variety of choices. I think Vietnam is just starting to pitch to this high-tech company in terms of the data center that Google is trying to put through. But keeping in mind that Vietnam already done a lot in terms of electronic, especially in the manufacturing space, like Samsung, LG, and that sort of space. The space that Google's looking at is data center. And one of the key issues there is, I think Vietnam still have a lot of opportunity. We've been talking to a lot of players, especially in Singapore and Korea, where we want to do a hyperscale data center in Vietnam. But one of the key things they're asking for is faster data connection, undersea cable, clean energy. If we can get ourselves fixed in those 2 or 3 areas, then we can be very, very competitive. And I believe that Vietnam's about 6 to 9 months behind, but we definitely can catch up. We were talking to some investors this morning where, the best place to put is probably central Vietnam. Central Vietnam is where a lot of the undersea cable is coming through, and then they go north and south. So that's where it should be. Plus central Vietnam, there's a lot of clean energy with solar and wind. So if Vietnam want to be competitive, they need to look at clean energy supplying data center. Because at the moment, a lot of the data center moving from Singapore to Malaysia is really just across the strait to Johor Bahru. And Malaysia is still very heavily dependent on coal-fired power plant. And once a major player realized that Vietnam have clean energy, we will be coming here. So that's one of the key things that we are pushing the government to allow us to do direct PPA, clean energy. That's all interlinked to the whole space, but give us about 9 months or so. I think you'll see some announcements soon.
I think I'll add it's not necessarily a zero-sum game. If Google invests in Thailand, that doesn't mean they don't invest in Vietnam, or someone invests in Malaysia or India. I think too often people will see a headline, and if someone wins, that means Vietnam loses. And I don't think that's really the case. In this situation, there's a lot of opportunity in Vietnam, and if it goes someplace else, it actually doesn't make us weaker. It doesn't actually inhibit our opportunity. If anything, when we talk to foreign companies, and we've had, I would suggest, more institutional, whether it's FDI or other investors, come to VINACAPITAL. Sometimes we joke it's a fishing expedition, but I would say there's more international companies coming to Vietnam in the last 6 months, than ever. So I don't think this is a zero-sum game. I think there's going to be a continued investment in Vietnam. I think the things that we had talked about earlier, people were saying, I'm waiting for the political things to settle down. And within Vietnam, we're like, they're settled. But People want to watch for 6 months and they go, oh, it's settled, or I want to wait for the market to go up, then I'm comfortable. Okay. And so, the important part is there's going to be a lot of winners in Asia. Vietnam will be one of them, but it doesn't have to be at the expense of anybody else. Okay. Yeah, I know time is up. I'm aware. I'm landing the plane on time. Ish, a little bit. Okay. Gentlemen, thank you very, very, very much. The one last thing I'll say, and I say this usually, and I feel awkward this, so we have 3 foreigners in Don. There's 200 staff at Vina Capital. And at last count, there's 8 people that don't speak Vietnamese. And I don't know how we got 3 of them on the closing panel. So we got to fix this next year. But we really are a local company with international standards. You just happen to see 3 of the foreigners here. But we're a local company. And so if you come to our office tomorrow, which we've all invited you after the company ends, you're going to hear Vietnamese, you're not going to hear English. It just so happens, for the purpose of this investment forum, which is primarily geared at foreign investors, it's in English, which does certainly limit some of the conversations, but we truly are a local organization. Okay.